Hi, I'm Judith. I'm a Canadian. I'm over 80. And today I'm going to talk about what happens when, despite your best intentions and no matter how long you try, you just suddenly drop all your habits or fall away from doing your good habits and bad habits creep back in. When you slip and slide in the daily habits that you've been trying to inculcate and do on a regular basis. Um, uh, so I'm going to you know that the purpose of this channel, my channel is Jam Today, Judith's Point of View, Judith's POV, Jam Today, Judith's without an apostrophe, POV. Um, and my purpose is to share the things that I've learned in my long life, even the things I'm learning recently, or that are been brought to my attention recently because they're repeating habits and patterns that I fall into. Um, so that you can have a happy and successful and fulfilling life. Success as you define it. So you can create the life that looking back, when you get to my age, you look back and you think, all right, I did pretty well with that. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not in all ways. Maybe I started late, maybe I was a late bloomer, whatever. But, really, I did make progress in this life in learning. If you think about life as being a big time when we were just learning how to be and how to improve and how to improve our characters or whatever. But where you can look back and think, I did it. I did okay. I'm happy with what I've achieved. Um, so, yeah. So sometimes, it's two steps forward and one step back, and sometimes it's one step forward and two steps back. And I had an example of this recently. So, in an earlier video, I think it was video number 9, episode number 9. So way early in the channel, I uh, I talked about the force of habit uh, and how important habits are to creating a happy and successful and fulfilling life. And I'm going to talk now about what happens, how you deal with it when you slip out of those good habits or back into bad habits or both. Um, and and let me put one caveat on this. I am not talking here. I'm not going to be talking about someone who's who's, let's say, an addict in some way, alcoholic or drug addict or even food addict, whatever, and who sex addict, I don't know, any kind of addiction, who is going along in recovery and then suddenly slips and slides right out of it back into relapse, full-grown relapse, where there are really serious consequences for that. I'm not talking about that. Um, I could talk about that, but I'm not going to. No, I'm not talking about that. And because I think that involves getting help in ways that I don't really have experience with particularly. Also, I'm not talking about people I know who have various disorders like um, mm, manic depression, for instance, like manic depression, where they then suddenly go off their medications and then they go into, back into full relapse in terms of their disease, or I don't know what you call that. I guess it is a mental disease. Um, so I'm not talking about that kind of thing either, because again, that needs help. It needs interventions. It needs, I don't know, more than I'm capable of or qualified to talk about. What I'm talking about here is the everyday kind of, I've been working really hard at developing habits, and I'll talk about myself. I have been working really hard at developing good health habits, at getting enough sleep, at meditating, because that's very good for stress and therefore for health. So daily meditation, even if it's short, at good dental hygiene practices like brushing with, more than just brushing my teeth in a regular way, but flossing and water picking and using mouthwash and stuff. Um, uh, all kinds of habits with regard to exercise, habits with regard to taking meds. I do that regularly, but uh, supplements, um, vitamins and so on at various times of the day, pegged to certain times of the day. Um, Going out now for a walk after dinner when the weather's nice in order to help to deal with blood sugars so that because I have insulin resistance, so trying to have my pancreas not have to work so hard to cope with any carbohydrates or sugars that I put into my system, and eating in a way that doesn't put extra sugars and fast carbs into my system and highly processed foods. All of those things. I've been working on all those things, and maybe more as well. So I have a whole bunch of habits that I developed, and I had been since last September. So this is now August of 2026. So since September of 2025, I have been really working hard at those habits, and I have been really succeeding. And some of those habits I've worked at, like the dental stuff, I've been working at for several years now. Um, and I fall off every so often. I miss a day for one thing or another. I'm not talking about that kind of falling off where you just miss a day or two. I'm talking about where it suddenly goes away and you're not doing those habits for fairly long stretches of time. So I had a case recently. I'm going to talk about 3 different situations, which I think they're all slightly different in their cause and therefore slightly different in how you get back on track. The easiest one is one that happened to me recently. If you've seen my latest videos, you'll know from the last few weeks, you'll know that I was away for 10 weeks. Back home now, safe and sound, but my partner and I drove out to the west coast of Canada. We live in Ontario. We drove out to the west coast of Canada, to the very northern tip of Vancouver Island in British Columbia. We saw things all the way along, and then he flew home, and I drove back, zigzagging around British Columbia, Alberta, and Saskatchewan, doing quite a lot of zigzagging up north and then back down south and so on, in order to see family and friends and relatives and friends, people that mattered to me. And I called that part of it the Before It's Too Late tour. I suppose the whole trip really was a Before It's Too Late tour because we're in our 80s and we don't know how much longer we can do those kinds of driving vacations and seeing our country and all that. And my partner had never been out west. So, and certainly had never driven across it. I have several times and have been out many times, but because I'm having relatives there, and my mother got remarried and moved out there, and so I was out there a lot. And my parents came from the west originally, so at any rate, away for 10 weeks. So here I was from last September and working hard at losing weight, again for the insulin resistance, being part of a program that's paid for by our Ontario Health Insurance. It's called Lifestyle RX, if anyone is interested in it. There are 2 programs. One program is for people with type 2 diabetes. I don't have that. Another program is for people with other chronic health conditions, and I do qualify there. So losing weight, doing all this stuff for exercise and stress relief and just good healthy habits. And I hadn't been drinking alcohol very much, whereas before I used to drink it pretty much every day. If I'd go on streaks. If I was dieting, I wouldn't have any, and if I wasn't dieting, I would have a drink or 2, or maybe even 3 a day. And so I had lost half the weight I need to lose. I'm still I got to work on that, and we went away, and I can tell you, every one of those habits, the only habit I retained was taking supplements in the morning and evening. Never mind the mid-afternoon, because I didn't even take those things with me. And that was a first for me to actually keep on doing supplements while I traveled. But I did nothing else. I didn't exercise. I didn't eat. I didn't avoid highly processed foods. I didn't avoid sugar. I didn't avoid alcohol. I had adult drinks every single night. I ate a ton of French fries. I was eating in restaurants. I just ate white bread. I ate whatever I wanted to. All the things that I had not been eating, and I was not doing all the healthy things that I had been doing, like eating the low carbohydrate stuff, eating lots of vegetables, getting lots of fiber. I wasn't doing any of those things, at least deliberately. I explained it to someone by saying it was like a little bit like Alice in Wonderland. It was like I walked into a different reality. I went down a rabbit hole and I was suddenly in a different world. And while I had beforehand talked to the dietitian from the program, and I had made plans, and I took some bread along, some special bread that I could eat, and whatever. And I was going to make sandwiches that we could have at luncheons, and hard boiled eggs and whatever. Well, that lasted about 2 days, and then I was just off, and we were just on holiday like we'd always been, and I was eating and drinking and not exercising unless we happened to be walking around somewhere. I was just doing it, and the lifestyle stuff, all those habits were just kind of way back in the background somewhere. they, they were not really figuring in my calculations at all. And at some level, I knew that if this went like any other vacation I'd ever had, I was going to come back heavier, having gained a bunch of weight. Um, Luckily, that did not happen. I gained 2.2 pounds in 10 weeks of just not paying any attention. But I believe that was due to age, that I don't have the appetite that I used to have. I'm pretty sure that's what's going on with that. So, anyway, I came back a week ago, 9 days ago. This is a Sunday, a week ago Friday. And that night, I acted like it was a hotel. The day I got home, I just brought in the things I would bring in if I was in a hotel for overnight. I took them out of the suitcase when I needed them. I left everything. I didn't try to unpack. I didn't start doing anything. And I had my regular drinks that night, like I've been having every night. But then the next day I got up and I started unpacking. I unpacked for 2 days. I ironed clothes. I did everything. And I went right back to at least some, if not all of the good habits, but I went back to the really key ones. I especially dropped the really bad habits. So no alcohol, eating the kind of bread, like not eating white bread anymore, eating the kind of bread that I had in the freezer at home that's better for insulin resistance, for keeping your blood sugars low, eating more healthy foods. I haven't gotten completely back on it. I'm not eating the amount of fiber that I should have. I'm doing some of it, but not enough yet. I haven't reintroduced beans and legumes and things like that. I haven't gotten fully back to exercise. I went to line dance the first Monday I was back, and I went to cardio class Wednesday and Friday, but I have not gone back to the gym and haven't started strength training again. I'm going to be doing that in another week. My intention was to start slowly with the Monday, Wednesday, Friday things, because those are lighter classes. And then after 2 weeks, because I also have a huge amount of things to do, a lot of things to do after 10 weeks away, you can imagine. So I would work on my big to-do list, and I would go back to the gym in a couple of weeks, after a couple of weeks at home, and do sort of light workouts for a few weeks, and then move into heavier stuff with my trainer. Well, unfortunately, line dance now isn't on for the next 2 weeks, and neither is my cardio classes, because the roof of the senior center where I go is being replaced. So I don't actually have any exercise scheduled for the next 2 weeks. Well, for the next week, and then I do go back with the trainer. So, oh well, I'll figure out something that I can do. But I did get back, as far as I could, to my good habits. And that wasn't so hard, because it was like I went away to a different location, and then I came back to a location where I was used to doing those things. And so it was easier. The green tea was right there. I didn't have to try to figure out how to make it in a hotel room and stuff. So I sip every evening. I just sip on something. So it's either adult beverages or green tea. And so green tea it is now. So that was relatively easy to do. I think the thing about that was to, number one, to take it a bit easy. Don't try to do everything all at once the very first day you get back. Start where you are. That's a rule all the time. Start where you are. I was at nothing much happening, so it was pretty easy to start doing a few things. And I'll just check my habit tracker that I've got here. I think the first day that I got back, I managed the night before that to sleep 7 to 8 hours. And that was about all I did. And then, oh no, but I didn't have, actually, I wasn't too bad, but I didn't do any bad things, but I didn't do any really good things either. And then the next day after that, um, yeah, I got to my 7 to 8 hours sleep, which I don't do all the time, by the way, and I don't have a lot of control over that. I just have to make sure I get to bed on time and hope that I sleep enough. But I did go back to my mid-afternoon supplements, to getting 8+ cups of water, having what I call clean food and drink, um, and 12 hours of fasting the night before. Green tea doesn't count in fast this kind of fasting. Um, just no carbohydrates, no real food, and also getting some morning sun and getting back to meditation. So by 2 days after I got home, I got back to meditation, which I have done every single day since. I don't always get the morning sun. I have a couple of times walked after dinner. I've been gradually adding things in from that list, and your list will be different than mine, of course. But I found that, number one, start where you are. Number two, add things slowly, because if I tried to do 10 new things all of a sudden, I would burn out after a couple of days. So add it back in. I was away for 10 weeks. If it takes me 2 or 3 weeks to get everything back in place, oh well, it's good. That I'm looking at the long term here. So, um, and of course, I went back to what are my intentions with regard to this program. I need to lose another number of pounds. And I also am looking for tests, for blood test results that show that I'm actually, this condition of insulin resistance has actually been improved. I was supposed to be having the blood work for that, the final thing for that program, anytime now, but I put it off for 3 months till December, so I get another 3 months to get my blood sugar issues, if any, back to normal. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Second kind of condition that I find is, and I don't know if normal people have this, but I have, as I mentioned before, ADHD, and I have a kind of disease of more. I like more of things. And I tend to have more of everything in my life than I need. More books, more records, more CDs. That's my late husband's fault, not mine. But more rings, more of everything. Luckily, not more food now, because my appetite won't sustain that, but I used to have that as well. So what happens with me with good habits is that I start making more and more and more of them, and I start extending them. So instead of saying, when I start out with meditation, for instance, I'll think that anything up to 5 minutes is good. 5 minutes of meditation, great, I've done it for the day. If I'm flossing my teeth, I don't do it for the full 2 minutes on the button on the thing. I do it until I get tired of having the electric toothbrush whipping around in my mouth and I think I've covered everything. So I don't even know how much it is. Maybe a minute, maybe a minute and a half. I don't know. Sometimes maybe only half a minute. With the flossing, I don't fill the water floss container right up too far, and I stop whenever I get tired of that, and I feel like there's no more gut coming out. I've found everything. So I don't try to be a perfectionist at it, but what will happen over time is I'll say, oh, instead of doing 5 minutes meditation, I should be doing 20 minutes meditation. I'll be trying to work myself up to 20 minutes meditation, half an hour meditation. And then everything gets bigger and bigger, and I have to do it more and more perfectly. And finally, I don't think I suffer from this much anymore, but I did this again and again and again all the way through my life. And then I would just suddenly go, oh, this is too much. I'm not doing any of it. And so I would have a whole streak of really good habits, and then I would just go, oh, never mind. And I would be off it for months and months and months. And then I would have to start again. And then starting again always involved the same steps. Number one, start where you are. Number two, little by little, baby steps. Just one habit for a week, and make it very small, and make it so that you don't have to do it for too long. And then maybe see if you can do it for a little bit more time, and then add another habit, and then work it up. And it's a very slow process. And again, use a habit tracker for that. I mean, I just find if I use a habit tracker, it keeps me more on track. The other thing I do is I write the key things that I'm trying to do every day in my to-do list, in my to-do planner, which has pages, and so over here, I'll show you a blank page, but over here, so down here I put my schedule of things for the day, and here I put my 3 most important things to do in the day. But here I'll put at the top a list of the habits that I really, really need to remember to do. And I mean, I have some habits I don't have to tell myself to do. Taking my medications, my actual medications, is not something I have to put on a list. And I don't track it because I do it once in a while. I miss, but hardly ever. And then I'll add other things that I want to do besides these 3 things. I'll add them down here. And there's a place for checking off water and food. I don't record my food here, but you could. And you can record your exercise here, and then you have a place for other notes. I find that very handy. Unfortunately, it's a U.S. product. So those of you who are in the U.S., that's good. Or if you don't mind buying U.S., I'm trying not to buy U.S., but I have some of these in stock already in my cupboard that I bought all at once. And there are lots of other journals, and you could just use a notebook. At any rate, starting small, and then now I just say to myself, I don't ever have to get to 20 minutes of meditation. If I never get more than 5 minutes of meditation, but I can do it consistently day after day, that is really great. If I ever get to the point, I mean, once in a while I'll have 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and I'll do a longer meditation, and that's all good, but there's no requirement for that. And I think keeping those expectations low is, but reasonable, just so that you get some of that. Now, there may be some habits where you have to do more in order to get the benefit of them, but anyway, that's the second case. Is if you, like me, just do it and do it and do it until it's too much, and then you just drop it all. Well, then starting back. The third one I think is harder and more challenging. The third case. So I talked about just going away to a different environment where you don't have the habit of those habits. And so you don't, and then when you come back into your other environment, you can kind of pick that up. The second thing is where it becomes too much and you just blow it off, and then starting again slowly. The third thing, the third situation I think is harder, and that's where, your life genuinely gets too busy. You suddenly have something that happens, or you have some kind of medical emergency that interrupts. You break your leg and you can't exercise for a period of time. It can be really easy then after that not to get back into it. But I'm thinking more of things like you get too busy, or you start having stresses, and the bad habits start creeping in. You start having a drink after dinner because you're stressed from the day, and you forget about the green tea bit, or you, I don't know, you just have varying worries and stresses and strains, and it makes you feel less like pursuing good habits and sticking with it. It's easier to do good habits when life is calm and kind of settled. But if things are always chaotic, or if your life is always kind of chaotic and there's lots of drama going on, and then it's hard to have a routine in your day, because a lot of having good habits is about having routines and having them pegged to certain things. For instance, I have certain things I do mid-afternoon. Well, that works for me because I'm not out working, and usually I'm home. And even if it's just 5 o'clock in the afternoon, when I finally get home, if I've been out in the afternoon, I can take those supplements that I take. I take creatinine and collagen and a couple of other things. And I take my blood pressure sometime during the afternoon after I've been sitting relaxing for a while. So doing those things, if your life is always topsy-turvy and no day is the same, it's harder to attach habits to that, and it's therefore easier to drop those habits. I recommended in that last video, episode number 9, a book called Atomic Habits. I forget the author right now, but if you Google Atomic Habits, you will find it. He's very famous, and it's a wonderful book. I don't have the physical book. I have it on audio book, so I can't show it to you. Um, Maybe I should get the physical book. At any rate, it's um, it's a really good about how to start small with habits and how to build them up and how to attach them to other habits so they become routines and so on. Um, I think it's really important then to get in touch with your why, the intent. Why does it matter to you to have this habit? What's it going to do for you? What's your intention about this habit? To really start doing that. And the other thing, if you can, is to make a rule for yourself. Um, I mean, this works in recovery programs, like 12-step recovery programs too. For instance, let's say you have to stop doing a certain thing. uh, I will take alcoholism. Luckily, I'm not an alcoholic, but I know about this program. I'll take alcoholism as an example. Let's say you've got to stop. You want to stop drinking. So in AA, they'll tell you one day at a time, right? You don't have to stop drinking for your whole life. Just one day at a time, and you do that for one day, and then you have support. You have steps and tools, steps you can work to make long-term recovery, and tools you can use like having a sponsor and phoning the sponsor and phoning other people, and writing about it and doing other things. And the big book even says eat a chocolate bar and instead of having a drink if you really feel the urge, um, which I've always laughed at because I'd rather eat the chocolate bar than have the drink. Um, but anyway, uh, I just think there are ways in uh, in which you can make a rule for yourself, and you may break the rule. But a rule is, I'm not going to have a drink today. Just like when I stopped smoking, I said, I'm a non-smoker, I choose not to smoke. And I just didn't smoke that first day, and then I didn't smoke the second day, and I didn't smoke the third day. So having a rule that says I'm not going to have that drink today. Um, I didn't do very well with that last night, by the way. I had a drink, and I hadn't had one all week, and I thought, oh, maybe I'd like to have a drink, and I did. So I, do as I do, not or do as I say, not do as I do. In this case, um, so I got to get back on that today. I'm pretty sure I'll be back to my no alcohol thing. Um, okay, so uh, yeah, so really get in touch with your intentions. Try to make a rule. Try to do it like one day at a time, and again, start slowly. Don't try to take on everything. If you've got a whole list of habits you have to do, pick the one thing that's going to make the biggest difference, which is likely giving up a bad habit or substituting a good habit instead of a bad habit. Like I'm going to have green tea instead of alcohol at night, um, and then gradually add the other things that uh, can work. And eventually, the rule for the day and the reminder in your to-do list or whatever becomes a habit, and ultimately maybe gets to the point where you don't have to write it down or track it. I, I, unless it's mandatory, like taking medications, I pretty much have to keep tracking forever. It's just my ADD thing. That's how it is. Anyway, so that's what I think about that. Um, I have some other videos that you might want to look at in regard to this if you're having trouble getting back to a reset anytime, if you're slipping and sliding. Oh, you can remember that better is always better. That's another thing that I find comforting. Like doing better today than you did yesterday, or doing better at lunch than you did at breakfast, or doing better at dinner than you did at lunch is always better, right? Try to make better choices every day in whatever you're doing. Exercising for 5 minutes is better than not exercising at all, and exercising for 10 minutes is better than doing it for 5 minutes, and so on. As long as you don't get it to the point where you think you have to exercise 2 or 3 hours a day, just, and then it becomes too much and you go, oh, again. So, um, uh, you can always, I think you can always pretty much get back to habits, um, assuming that there's no physical disability reason why you can't. Obviously, if you've got a broken leg, you can't go running, for a period of time until you get better. But you can, as soon as you're able, start moving back to that if running is your thing. It is not mine. So that's what I've got to do on. I've got to say about habits and relapsing or slipping away from your good habits and sliding back into bad habits. It happens to us all. I don't know anyone who's perfect at it. I think the thing is to keep trying, and so wish me luck as I get back to all of my habits in the next few weeks, my good habits in the next few weeks, and I hope to continue them for months and months and years ahead. Take care.